Hello everyone. I welcome you all to the online classes of Girls High School and College. Today we are going to study geography. The lesson that we have taken is earthquakes.
Any sudden vibration or movement of a part of the Earth's crust caused by natural or man-made stresses resulting in violent tremors or shaking, and the trembling is called an earthquake. It can be defined as a shock or series of shocks due to sudden movement of crustal rocks generated at a point known as seismic focus within the crust or mantle. The point where the shock waves, seismic waves, reach the surface is termed as epicenter. It is directly above the focus point. The effects of an earthquake are greater if its seismic focus lies near the surface of the earth. The waves generated by an earthquake are recorded by an instrument called seismograph or seismometer. The science of earthquakes is known as seismology. Earthquakes are one of the most hazardous natural phenomena because of the extent of damage to life and property they cause all around. Man has been unable to control this disaster and is helpless against this natural calamity. So far, man has been able to find only the causes which leads to this violent, catastrophic event. One can judge the magnitude of destruction by the example of the earthquake occurred on May 31, 1970 in northern Peru, on July 28, 1976 in Tangshan, China, Gujarat earthquake in India, January 26, 2001, recently biggest undersea earthquake resulted in terrible disaster of the west coast of Sumatra, Indonesia. It occurred on 26 December 2004 with 8.9 to 9.3 magnitude on Richter scale. Causes of earthquakes. The main causes of earthquakes are as under: volcanic eruptions, plate tectonics, folding and faulting, anthropogenic factors. The very first one is volcanic eruptions. Volcanic eruption is one of the main causes of earthquakes. Volcanic earthquakes are caused by gas explosion. Such earthquakes occur either simultaneously with eruption or more commonly in the period preceding an eruption. The violent eruption of Krakatoa volcano between Sumatra and Java Islands caused such a severe earthquake that its impact was experienced at Cape Horn that was 12,800 kilometers away. The Krakatoa earthquake generated 30 to 40 meters high tsunami sea waves which killed over 36,000 people in the coastal area of Java and Sumatra. The ash cloud reached into the mesosphere and sounds of blast were heard in Central Australia, the Philippines, and even 4,800 kilometers away in the Indian Ocean. Such volcanic eruption always result in severe earthquakes of hazardous nature. Folding and faulting, a fracture in a rock along which there has been an observable amount of displacement is known as fault. Earthquake occurs when movement of the earth takes place along a line of fracture called fault, as it is a weaker section. Such earthquakes are called tectonic earthquakes. The San Andreas Fault of California is a typical example which led to earthquake in 1906. Anthropogenic factors. Human interaction with nature is also one of the main causes of the occurrence of many of the earthquakes, like the extraction of minerals, deep underground mining, blasting of rocks by dynamites for construction of roads, dams and reservoirs, nuclear explosion, etc. might lead to the occurrence of earthquakes of various intensity and magnitude. Many of the earthquakes of the world in the present century are a result of the construction of dams and reservoirs. Measurement of earthquakes. The magnitude of earthquake is most commonly assessed by the Richter scale, which was devised by an eminent seismologist, Charles F. Richter, in 1935 and then modified in 1965 by Richter and his colleague Benno Gutenberg. This scale can be related to the energy released at the earthquake center and thus can be used as an estimate of the severity of a particular earthquake. The scale has neither a fixed maximum nor a minimum, but earthquakes rated as high as 8.4 on the Richter scale have been measured so far. Intensity of the earthquakes. The intensity or destructive power of an earthquake is measured in relation to the effects of the earthquake on human life. Generally, the destruction is described in terms of damage caused to buildings, dams, bridges, and other structures as reported by witnesses. Distribution of earthquake. The earthquakes have a definite pattern of distribution. The distribution pattern of earthquakes shows that there are three major belts in the world in which the earthquakes frequently occur. These belts are the first one, Circum-Pacific Belt, also called Convergent Plate Boundary, the Mid-Atlantic Belt, Divergent Plate Boundary, the Mid-Continental Belt, and the Interplate Seismicity. The Circum-Pacific Belt. The widespread and intense earthquake activity occurs along the subduction zone at convergent plate boundaries. The Circum-Pacific Belt extends in the west from Alaska to Kuril, Japan, Mariana, and the Philippine Trenches, beyond which it is divided into two branches, one going towards the Indonesia Trench and the other towards the Kermak-Tonga Trench to the northwestern of New Zealand. On the eastern side of the Pacific, the earthquake zone follows the west coast of North America and continues southward along Peru and Chile Trench on the west coast of South America. Most of these earthquakes have their focus more than 25 km deep. About 66% of the total earthquake of the world are recorded in this belt. The Mid-Atlantic Belt. This belt of earthquakes extend along the mid-oceanic ridges and several islands near the ridges of the Atlantic Ocean. The seafloor spreading is the main cause of earthquake in this belt. Earthquakes of moderate to mild intensity with shallow focus less than 70 km deep are recorded in this belt. The Rift Valley of East Africa and the Red Sea are considered as an extension of this belt. The Mid-Continental Belt. This earthquake belt extends along the Alpine mountain system of Europe, North America through Asia Minor, Caucasia, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan to the Himalayan mountain system including Tibet, the Pamir, Tian Shan, Altai and the mountains of China, Myanmar and eastern Siberia. This zone is characterized by large earthquakes of shallow origin and some of intermediate origin. Deep focus earthquakes are almost absent in this belt. About 21% of the total earthquakes are recorded in this belt. Interplate seismicity. Although most of the world's seismicity occur along plate boundaries, the continental platform also experiences infrequent and scattered shallow focus earthquakes. The zone of earthquake in East Africa and western United States and the peninsula of India are most striking. Consequences of earthquakes. Building collapse. People can be trapped in collapsed building or under rubble that collapse into the street. This is the type of damage that leads to worst casualties. The worst things to do in a quake is to rush out into the street during the quake. The danger from being hit by falling glass and debris is many times greater in front of building than inside. Building knocked off their foundation. Building that can otherwise withstand the quake can be knocked off their foundation and severely damaged. This type of damage can be largely prevented by bolting the frame securely to the foundation so it will remain in place. Landslides. Building can be damaged when the ground gives way beneath them. This can be in form of a landslide down a hill or liquefaction of soils that can cause severe settling of the ground. In the young mountains like Andes, Rockies, Alps and the Himalayas, earthquakes result into landslides which damage the human settlement and disturb the transport system. Fire. Fires often break out following earthquakes. They can be caused by flammable materials being thrown into a cooking or heating fire or broken gas lines. The major consequences of earthquakes are deformation of ground surface, damage and destruction of human establishment and structures such as building railway lines, roads, bridges, dams, towns and cities, loss of human and cattle lives, and devastating fires, floods, landslides, and disturbance in the underground levels. Some of the adverse consequences of earthquakes have been illustrated briefly in the following paragraphs. Loss of property. Earthquakes inflict great damage to buildings, roads, railways, dams, bridges, etc. The damage to property is more serious in the areas of unconsolidated material such as alluvium, colluvium, and artificially filled ground and depressions. Loss of human lives. It has been estimated that on an average about 15,000 people are killed every year by earthquakes. There have been earthquakes of great magnitude in the densely populated areas of the world in which over 1 lakh people lost their lives. Flash floods. Many a times under the impact of severe earthquakes, the dams and embankments develop fissures which become the cause of flash floods. Tsunamis. Seismic sea waves. The seismic sea waves traveling through the ocean and seawater result into high sea waves which are known as tsunami. Tsunami is a Japanese term which has been universally adopted to describe a large seismically generated sea wave. These waves are capable of causing considerable destruction in certain coastal areas, especially where submarine earthquakes occur. Rise and subsidence of ground surface. Under the impact of several earthquakes, the land rises or subsides into the weaker zone. Some of the constructive effects of earthquakes. Earthquakes may result in fissures opening, causing a geyser or hot spring which are useful from medicinal point of view to man. Sometimes earthquakes result in formation of coastal submergence and changing the coastal forms, forming bays and may prove to be helpful in navigation.
Thank you for watching children. Stay home, stay safe.